There's apparently a new bombshell report suggesting that Jalen Hurts can't throw hot routes that even I can't quite believe. Plus, listen to two NFL experts explain exactly why free agent head coach Bill Belichick is the perfect fit for Philadelphia. And a senior Eagles reporter suggests that Sirianni's job is in fact on the line come Monday night. Boy, this has been a crazy week and it keeps getting crazier. I'm Thomas Mott. This has been the Thomas Mott Show. Now, when I tell you this is not just the craziest week of the Eagles' entire season, on top of it being the craziest week in sports, maybe in the entire year, I'm not kidding you. Like, buckle up. There's a lot going on today, starting with the Patriots and Bill Belichick officially parting ways this morning to the surprise of, honestly, absolutely nobody. Now, of course, like you, respect the hell out of Coach Belichick and what he was able to do, regardless if Brady was the main reason or not. But as an Eagle fan, I think all of our favorite Patriots memory has to be watching Bill Belichick lose a Super Bowl to a backup quarterback with a backup left tackle and Jalen Mills as your best cover corner. Now, of course, despite the fun history lesson, the main reason why we start with Belichick today, because many are claiming that he is in fact the perfect fit for the Eagles if they fire Sirianni next Tuesday, according to none other than Nick Wright and Colin Cowherd just the other day.
So the reason I brought the whole Sirianni thing up was I have a different kind of galaxy brain question for you, which is this. If they lose to Tampa and they fire him, isn't that the perfect spot for Belichick? You have all that talent on defense. The offensive skill position guys are there. They're already there.
And your weakness is drafting. Howie Roseman's an expert at it.
Exactly right. And it's like, hey, the offense is in place. The defense has all this blue chip talent up front. And Belichick's been getting the most out of secondary players and linebackers for 20 years. Cold weather, Northeastern city with a blue chip franchise, chance to break Shula's record, chance to get to the Super Bowl. That to me is a hand in glove fit that I would strongly consider if I were all parties.
Okay, bear with me. It's a little crazy, but they did make some good points, especially since there are, 7 head coaching openings. Philadelphia probably has the most win-ready roster, despite Adam Schefter suggesting Atlanta makes a lot of sense for Bill Belichick as well. Although without a quarterback, I'm not sure why Bill would want to go to the Falcons, but that's neither here nor there. Still, my issue with the Philly-Belichick connection is that since Brady left in 2019, Bill hasn't proven to me that he can coach offense, draft well, or win football games. 3 really important things for an NFL organization. I mean, at least Nick Sirianni, regardless of the last 6 weeks, has a winning record the past 3 years and has been to a Super Bowl. Honestly, though, the main reason why I don't think this works is because do you think Bill Belichick and Howie Roseman would get along? Like, Philly fired Super Bowl winning head coach Doug Peterson because of the power struggle dynamic between coach and GM. And again, Bill's offenses have looked absolutely terrible, and right now, Philadelphia needs to figure out offense. Like, who's he bringing in as the offensive coordinator for Jalen Hurts? I get the idea of him improving the defense, but bringing in a 70-plus-year-old coach for a young franchise quarterback in Jalen Hurts who needs somebody to be there for the long run, I'm just really out on this, although I'm very curious where you guys are at on the whole situation. Now, of course, just because I think Bill Belichick to Philadelphia is not the best fit does not negate the fact that ESPN senior Eagles reporter Tim McManus dropped a bombshell on a Ringer podcast the other day, suggesting that Sirianni's time is running out in Philadelphia.
Believing what I'm seeing with my eyes, that this thing has fallen apart on the head coach, and there's some rot going on right now. So it's a hard one to pin, most likely, but I feel like it's out there that they might end up moving on.
So I guess the idea of a blowout loss to the Bucs costing Sirianni his job is not the craziest idea that I suggested a couple of days ago. Still though, regardless if you're pro-Sirianni or anti-Sirianni, the Eagles' greatest battle when it comes to the idea of firing their head coach and hiring a new one is time. Like I've said before, 7 teams already have a head start on coaching interviews, and people are going to get hired really, really quick, like as early as next week. And I wonder if the Birds are going to be too late to the game to land one of the quote-unquote better candidates, like a Harbaugh or even a Ben Johnson, just due to the fact that they are technically still alive in the playoffs. Now, I'm not saying that you don't fire Nick Sirianni just because you're in the playoffs and 7 other teams who have fired head coaches are not and got a head start, but it's definitely something worth noting that if you want a big-name head coach, you probably need to be looking sooner rather than later. Now, of course, yesterday I cited that Schefter reported that ESPN's offensive coordinator Brian Johnson has a potential interview lined up, speaking of the coaching carousel, with the Carolina Panthers. Regardless of how you feel about Johnson, which of course all of us are saying, please Carolina, take him, he was asked about this new revelation yesterday during his weekly press conference.
Yeah, I have no comment. All of my focus is about this week, and we got a great opportunity with a special group of people to go out there and put on a great performance against Tampa Bay, and that's where all of our focus and energy is at the moment.
Good answer, Brian. Like, focus on not getting blown out by the 9-win Tampa Bay Buccaneers before you even consider going and maybe salvaging Bryce Young's career. Now, of course, if you thought that the Carolina Panthers were a one-off in terms of interviewing Brian Johnson, we have another team in the Tennessee Titans who officially submitted a request to interview the Eagles' current offensive coordinator. And while it doesn't mean that he's going to get a head coaching job or even a head coaching job offer, it still remains interesting that this offense, and at least the guy who runs it, is still getting looks for head coaching jobs by other football teams. Now, of course, speaking of Brian Johnson's offense, you guys know how the Birds seemingly don't have any hot routes designed for Jalen to check into when teams are clearly showing blitz over the past 6 weeks? Like, am I the only one who's noticed this? Well, according to this crazy report from longtime Eagle reporter John McMullen, it's not because Sirianni doesn't know how to dial up hot routes or Brian Johnson is completely inept. It's because Jalen Hurts can't throw hot routes. Yeah, I did a massive double take on that one too. Just bear with me. Apparently, the other day, McMullen stated that occasionally there is a lack of hot routes, but it's not because Sirianni doesn't know how to draw them up, and it's not because they're never open. He said if you look at Sirianni's game plan with Phillip Rivers back in the early 2019-2020 timeframe, there were hot routes all over, and they're not being integrated simply because Hurts can't throw them. Long story short, McMullen said that Sirianni isn't calling these hot routes because he knows Hurts can hardly throw in those areas. He finally mentions that there's a big chance Hurts simply may always struggle against the blitz and overly relies on his mobility too much. Now, this is crazy. This is one man's opinion, but it's still crazy coming from John McMullen. Now, the real question is he right? Before you go down and say, Thomas, you're ridiculous, I'm not parroting this. I'm just telling you what other people are saying. Still, though, is he correct? First off, I won't argue that Hurts has been perfect this year. He's struggled finding open receivers at times, especially when he's been under pressure. But to say that Jalen Hurts can't throw hot routes at all, hence why they're not calling them, is pretty wild because a hot route is just simply a slant or a simple stop route or a receiver running 3 yards, turning around, and putting his face right in front of the quarterback. Like, you're telling me that Sirianni has known this for 3 seasons, that Hurts cannot at all throw hot routes, and yet they've not done anything to address it. They simply have just gone, well, I guess he can't do it, so no point in running it, right? It just doesn't add up. Like, plus the whole idea that Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie gave Hurts $179 million in guaranteed money to a quarterback who apparently can't throw simple hot routes, I'm just not buying this at all. Plus, it's not like this has been a common theme. Like, do you remember just last year, Jalen Hurts was obviously really, really good, and the idea that he couldn't throw hot routes last year, despite being one of the most dangerous quarterbacks against the blitz, and also being the best quarterback in a Super Bowl against a defensive coordinator in Spags who loves to blitz the hell out of quarterbacks? Come on, just something does not add up here with this report. And again, I'm not defending Jalen Hurts this season. Hurts has definitely had a down year, quote unquote, versus where he was obviously last year under Shane Steichen and Nick Sirianni. But the whole idea that Hurts simply just can't throw a simple hot route or even audible to a simple hot route is pretty darn bizarre to me for a guy who, again, was so fantastic last year and has still won a bunch of games this year. Like, we forget the whole idea that Philadelphia was a 10-win football team a couple of weeks ago, and they were 10-1 and had beaten a bunch of really, really good defenses. Like, are we all of a sudden saying that those defenses didn't understand that Hurts couldn't throw hot routes, and now the past 6 weeks, Jonathan Gannon and I guess Wink Martindale finally figured that thing out? The crazy thing to me is the amount of finger pointing we've had to kind of dissect and kind of weed through the mud with over the past 6 weeks. Like, if it isn't coaches, maybe it's players, is it the GM and his data analytic minions? Like, I really don't know what's going on. One thing for sure, though, Philadelphia has got to get this thing figured out, and figured out quick, or else Baker and the Bucs are going to shake and bake their way to a first-round win against an 11-win Eagles team on Monday night, and then maybe set forth a snowball effect where you could see coordinators gone, coaches gone, Philadelphia starting over again, just 3 years removed from firing their Super Bowl winning head coach. Now again, I'm trying to figure out where you guys are at on this. Don't shoot the messenger and say, Thomas, you can't simply think that Belichick is the best fit and Hurts can't play quarterback. I'm not saying that. I've rebuked both of those things. But still, I want to read your comments on this, and I'm curious where you guys are at. The crazy thing is, we're not even talking about the Bucs right now. Like, there's so many injury news stuff happening a little bit earlier today. We're going to get to tomorrow. There's the idea of a very interesting weather situation going on with the Bucs game on Monday night. A lot to come. If you haven't hit that notification bell, I think only 10% of you guys have. Hit it right now. Get ready for plenty more Eagles coverage, whether we're advancing or whether they go for a coaching search. This is the place to be. I'm Thomas Mott on a Wild Thursday. This has been the Thomas Mott Show.